Good War. Chapter 1. 1939. The Well. 1 week until the start of World War II. "Barman, another drink, please," slurred the soldier. The public house in the village of Littlesham had never been so busy. With a steady stream of passing troops, it was inevitable. The public house itself, the Cricketers, sat on the main road out of the nearest town, Gratisham. Both the saloon and the public bars were full, mostly with soldiers, but also with the odd local, watching the cricket match being played on the green. The floor was dark pine, the dark oak tongue and groove running vertically up the wall about 5 feet from the floor. The plain walls above the oak was painted magnolia, with the oil lamps on the wall of each bar. Attached to the oak wall panels were wooden bench seats, while the rest of the floor had tables and chairs. A fireplace was at one end of the bar, with a large mirror on the wall above it. "Barman, another drink, please," the soldier called a bit louder. The barman, serving other people at the bar, looked over to the soldier, whose voice was starting to rise. "Be with you in a moment, sir." Beyond the loud soldier, the barman could look out of the window and to the green opposite, where a local cricket match was being played on the green oval of the grass, large houses following the shape of the oval. The barman saw the bowler running in towards the bowling crease, the ball in his right hand. The bowler picked up speed. The umpire looked back at the bowler, then towards the batsman at the other end of the wicket. The bowler, with 2 strides to go, swung his arm back as his body started to twist sideways. He passed the umpire as his left foot came down inside the crease. His arm turned like a windmill over his head as he released the ball. The red leather heading towards the stumps at the other end of the wicket. The batsman tapped his bat against the ground as the ball headed in his direction. With his eyes fixed on the fast-moving missile, the batsman shifted his weight forward onto his left leg. His bat rose to intercept the ball. He misjudged and watched as the ball sailed past his bat, past his body, catching the left hand and centre stump. "How's that?" shouted the bowler, while the rest of the team cheered, their hands raised skywards. The bowler spun to look at the umpire as the stumps flew from the ground. The bowls tossed in 2 directions. The umpire stuck his finger in the air. The first innings was over. The barman, hearing them cheer, knew that shortly the pub would fill with the sportsmen. While the barman was serving customers, the drunk soldier was getting more agitated, slamming his glass down on the bar, shards of glass flying in all directions. "Where's my drink?" shouted the soldier angrily. "Oi, what do you think you're doing?" replied the barman. "Now get out of my pub, go on, get out!" 2 soldiers who were having a drink in the public bar came into the saloon bar. "OK, barman, we'll sort him out for you." "Thank you, gentlemen." "Come on, soldier, think you've had enough, don't you?" The teams from the cricket ground rallied together, all chatting as they headed towards the pub. The old brick-built building was painted white with small sash windows on black frames, a white brick-painted entrance porch with a black door, brown tiled roof with a chimney at each end of the roof. To the south of the pub were a small general store and an old wooden windmill. As the teams reached the entrance door to the pub, the 2 soldiers were just showing the drunk out. They propped him up against the wall, then immediately headed back into the pub. The drunk soldier, leaning against the wall, took several deep breaths as the cricketers, laughing and joking, passed him by. The drunk lifted his head and started to walk in the direction of the windmill. In the village of Littlesham, Sunday dinners were being cooked. Pots and pans on argus, meat and vegetables were being prepared, whilst outside young girls were playing with toys, sitting on the front doorsteps, skipping in the street. Boys were playing hide and seek, while others played football in the park at the end of a row of farm workers' cottages. There were sticks in the ground to make the goalposts. John Paige was the oldest of the boys, at 13. He was bigger and stronger than the rest, fair-haired and good-looking, 5 feet 6 tall and tanned. On Saturdays he would work with his father labouring down on the farm. John still worked at the farm on Saturdays, but his father was not around. A call-up for the war effort had taken him away. This was also the case for John's best friend George. There were 10 boys in the park, the youngest being 8. A boy in each goal and the rest were on the field. The goalkeeper of John's team threw the ball to George. The big heavy leather football was hard for some of the smaller boys to kick. John and George made it easy for them, regularly giving the younger ones a chance to shine, to be the next Stanley Matthews, Billy Wright or Tommy Lawton. John gave the ball away to one of the younger players on the other team, who immediately kicked it forward towards John's goal. George ran back to collect the ball. "To you, John," he called. He passed the ball forward to John, who dribbled through the younger players. George had stopped. He was watching a drunk soldier staggering down the road past the park. The soldier lurched from one side to the other as he tried to walk, finding it hard to put one foot in front of the other. The path and road were no more than a dirt track and cobbles. George continued to watch the soldier, thinking he didn't look safe on his feet. When he was a short distance past the park, the drunk soldier staggered, his body moving one way and then the other, side to side. Finally losing his balance completely, he took several steps to the right and toppled into the village well. "Hey, mister! Are you okay?" George shouted. The game stopped as the rest of the boys looked up to see what George was shouting about. "Where is it, George?" called John. "That soldier! I think he must be drunk. He fell into the well. Quick, let's see if he's all right." They all rushed to the well. George, reaching the well first, called down, "Mister! Mister! Are you okay?" At the bottom of the well they could just make out the soldier, barely conscious, moaning. John climbed up on the wall of the well, looked down, hung his feet over the side and started to make his way down. "Okay, George, I'm going to help him. Go and get a rope from the blacksmith shop and bring some other people. As I go down, lower the rope," John instructed as he felt for his first foothold. "Okay, John." John started to climb into the well, making his way down the wall. Feeling for cracks and missing bricks in the sides of the wall of the well, he made his way slowly, not wanting to fall the rest of the way. George ran to the blacksmith's workshop. The workshop was on the opposite side of the cottages, a little way up the street from the playing field. The blacksmith's foundry was an old wooden shed. A brick-built chimney protruded from the rickety black-weathered slates on the roof. There were worn-out and cracked double wooden doors at the front of the old shack, with hand-painted words on an old rotting plank nailed above the door which read, "The Forge." George reached the blacksmith's shop, flung open the door as quickly as he could and rushed in. Not seeing the blacksmith, he called out, "Mr. Franklin! Mr. Franklin!" The far side of the shed had a window looking out onto the yard at the back of the forge. To one side of the yard was a door leading back into the shed. Mr. Franklin, the blacksmith, heard the young lad. With George still shouting from inside, Mr. Franklin made his way to the small door. As he opened the door, George was waiting, agitated and excited. "Whoa, lad," said Mr. Franklin. "Watch that furnace. What sort of fuss about?" Mr. Franklin had been the blacksmith in the village all his life. Everyone knew Mr. Franklin, and he knew everyone. He was not a big man, but very strong. Not muscular, but with a roundness and weight that gave him strength. He was balding, with short dark hair around the sides of his head, a big round face and a permanently fixed smile, coupled with a big heart and a friendly disposition. "Mr. Franklin, a soldier has fallen down the well. We need a rope. John Paige is going down the well to help him. We need to get there quickly." "Okay, lad, grab the rope. It's hanging up on that peg, and for heaven's sake, mind that fire." George rushed over to the peg holding the rope, while Mr. Franklin put on his brown leather jacket. "Let's get down there, see what's going on. Come on, lad." As the younger boys from the football teams looked down into the well, they could see John had made it halfway down. John's eyes were just growing accustomed to the dark, and he could now clearly see the body of the soldier at the bottom of the well. "Hang on, mister, I'm nearly with you." The soldier was floating semi-conscious in the water. His head kept dropping, then lifting as he gasped for breath. George ran back towards the well with the rope. Mr. Franklin followed a little way behind. The villagers swiftly realized there was something wrong, as Mr. Franklin headed speedily in the direction of the well. Walter Cook, who had been in the village for many years as a firefighter, now retired, but still in good health, was out for a stroll. "What's going on, Mr. Franklin?" "A soldier has fallen down the well, Mr. Cook. We may need some help." "I'll be straight there," called Walter. Walter walked as briskly as he could towards the well, following closely behind Mr. Franklin. John finally reached the bottom of the well, lowered himself into the water behind the soldier, and braced himself against the side of the wall. With his feet tightly wedged against some of the bricks sticking out of the wall, he put his arms under the soldier's arms and around the soldier's chest. With a heave, he raised the soldier's head from the water, and, to his relief, the water-soaked soldier held upright. George charged down the road towards the well. As he arrived with the rope, he looked down into the well and called out, "John, I'm here with the rope." "Okay, George, lower it down. I will tie it around the soldier. Is there anyone coming to help?" "Yes, Mr. Franklin." George looked back over his shoulder. "It looks like Mr. Cook is heading this way as well." "That's good," John called up. The younger boys moved over to make room for George. As he started to lower the rope, hand over hand into the well, the rope dropped towards John until it finally reached the water. John, grabbing the end of the rope, ran it under the soldier's arm and around his back. He had gained a knowledge of tying ropes while in the Scouts, as well as working on the farm. As he tied, he murmured to himself, "Loop, run back end, 2 turns." As soon as he had finished tying the rope, he looked up at the faces at the top of the well looking down at him. Mr. Franklin reached the well and called down, "Hello, lad. What's happening?" "Hello, Mr. Franklin. He is ready to come up." "Okay, lad." "Now, lad," said Mr. Franklin, turning to George, "put the rope through the top of the bucket winch and we'll get him up that way." "Okay, Mr. Franklin," George replied. George threw the rope over the winch, and Mr. Franklin grabbed the end on the other side of the winch. Walter Cook had now arrived and stood behind Mr. Franklin. Picking up the loose rope behind Mr. Franklin, he got ready to pull. They pulled the rope back, gently at first, as they took up the slack. Once they had started to feel the tension of the rope, the weight of the soldier's wet body started to rise from the water. John felt the slack in the rope being taken up. The rope and knot creaked as it tightened. The soldier started to lift. John, still braced against the wall of the well, watched as the soldier passed him, rising from the watery hole. The soldier's sodden clothes added to the weight as he ascended the tube. John lowered his face as the water poured from the limp soldier down onto him. "He is starting to come up," John called to those looking down. George, on hearing John, turned to Mr. Franklin and Walter. "He is starting to come up, Mr. Franklin." "OK, lad, that's good." Joan Armstrong was in the street when the commotion started. She was a friend of John's mother. She and the other neighbours stopped what they were doing to see from a distance what was happening down at the well. The news finally reached them that John Paige was in the well. She rushed over to John's house and started banging loudly at the door and calling for John's mother. "Sarah, Sarah, come quickly. Something's going on at the well. A soldier. He's fell in. John's down the well rescuing him." Sarah was in the kitchen cooking the dinner for the family. On hearing the shouting and door knocking, she quickly headed for the front door. John's sister Marion looked over the banister as her mother rushed towards the front door of the cottage. "Joan, what's that? What are you saying?" "It's John, Sarah, it's John," babbled Joan, panting. "A soldier fell down the well. John climbed down to help him. Quick, we must get down there." "I'll be right there." Sarah turned to Marion. "Marion, come quickly. We must get to the well straight away." "On my way, mother." Sarah and Marion left the house and joined with Joan as they hurried towards the well. As Sarah, Marion and Joan arrived, Mr. Franklin and Walter were still pulling the rope to raise the soldier from the well. The young boys all looking over the wall to see what was happening below. As John's mother got closer, she could see George looking down into the hole. She took him by the arm. He turned and raised his head to see Sarah's worried face looking at him. "George, what's happening?" "Mrs. Paige, as we were playing football, we saw this soldier fall into the well." "Where's John now?" "He's still in the well, Mrs. Paige." Sarah tried to look down the well, but was unable. The body of the soldier, reaching the top, was blocking any view into the hole. She moved her head from side to side for any view that she could, but there was no sign of him. "John! Are you okay, John?" she called down. John was still half in the water at the bottom of the well, water still running from the soldier and pouring down onto him. "I'm okay, Mum," John called up. Mr. Franklin and Walter still pulling on the rope, the soldier nearing the top of the well. A small crowd of local villagers gathered round to see what was happening. The soldier's head appeared above the well. Mr. Franklin held the rope, while Walter and a few of the villagers grabbed the soldier, pulled him out over the wall of the well. The soldier, his body limp, wet and inert, was laid on the ground on his side. Walter untied the rope and started removing the jacket of the soldier. More local people from the village were running to help. Some arrived with blankets to cover the motionless body of the soldier. Mr. Franklin looked down into the well to check John. "Are you okay, lad?" he called to John. "Yes, I'm okay, Mr. Franklin." "Watch yourself then, lad. The rope's coming back down." At the bottom, John covered his head as the rope dropped past him, splash into the water. "Tie the rope around yourself, lad, and we'll get you straight out of there." John grabbed the rope and started to wrap it around himself. While tying, he called up, "Will do, Mr. Franklin." Sarah, still looking anxiously down into the well, could just make out John at the bottom. "You be careful, John." "Will do, Mum. I'm ready to come up now." Mr. Franklin, now with the boys, started pulling at the rope. In the well, John started to lift. Slowly he rose up towards the brightness. As he reached the top, he put his hands over the edge. Sarah grabbed her son and helped haul him over the low wall. She lovingly clutched the soaking John and wrapped her arms around him. "Oh, John, John, I'm so proud of you." The boys crowded around John and Sarah. Mr. Franklin walked over to them as Sarah opened her arms. "Good work, lad," said Mr. Franklin as he patted John on the back. "Very good work indeed."